Good afternoon and welcome to Start a New You Kitchen. We're going to be cooking with two ingredients today that you might not be familiar with. One of them is millet, an ancient pseudo grain. It's not a true grain, but it's more of a seed. And we're going to be making a cereal out of millet. And then we're also going to be working with tofu. Tofu can be used very similar to eggs. And so our recipes today are creamy millet and bean cereal, and you'll find this on page 4 of your recipe packet. Also savory breakfast vegetable delight, and you'll find that on page 12. So you might want to mark those spots right now as we get started. So we're going to page 4 first with creamy millet and bean cereal. Our ingredients are 1½ cups of water, 3/4 teaspoon salt, 1/2 cup of millet, 1 cup cooked white beans, 1/4 cup raw cashew pieces, 1 tablespoon nutritional yeast, 1/2 teaspoon onion powder, and 1/4 teaspoon salt, 1/2 teaspoon lemon juice. We're going to begin by combining water and salt in a saucepan and bringing it to a boil. While the water is boiling or coming to a boil, then we're going to blend the millet in our blender until it's grit size pieces. And then we're going to add the millet into the boiling water, whisking it quickly in so that we can avoid any clumping. Then we're going to reduce the heat to medium-low, cover our pan, and allow it to simmer for 10 minutes. Then we're going to combine the remaining ingredients in the blender. This will be a bean cream, and we'll blend it until creamy smooth. We don't want any grittiness at all. And then we are going to add water as needed just to make sure that we can have a nice funnel in the middle of our blender. Then when the millet is tender, we're going to add 1/4 cup of the blender mixture, which is the bean cream, to the millet. Then for our savory breakfast vegetable delight, our ingredients are 1/2 package of extra firm tofu, 1/2 cup shredded potato, 1 cup canned diced tomatoes, 2 tablespoons green chilies. You can get the mild ones, they're not hot that way, and you do want to make sure that they have been peeled, else you're going to have the peeling coming off the peppers and they're hard to chew. You want 1/2 cup of chopped onion and 2 cloves of garlic. Then we're going to also add our seasonings, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1/4 teaspoon garlic powder, 2 tablespoons nutritional yeast flakes, 1 tablespoon dried parsley, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and if you are trying to reduce your salt intake, then you can use Mrs. Dash, or you could use both of them if you choose, if you're not limiting your salt intake. And then 1/8 teaspoon of ground turmeric root. This is going to give it a nice yellow color. And 1/4 cup grated non-dairy cheese. That can be optional, but we're going to add it today. All right, and how we're going to make that is we're going to allow the tofu to drain. Once it has gotten all the extra liquid off, then we're going to crumble the tofu into a large skillet. We're going to shred potato and then add that to the skillet. And we're going to add the remaining vegetables and seasonings, mix it well, and then heat it all combined over medium heat until the potato is tender. And both the cereal and this will need to stir occasionally until they're finished. In this case, when the potato is tender. Then we're going to top it with our grated cheese and then cover it with a lid and allow that cheese to slightly melt. All right, so I think we're ready to get started. All right, so I've just washed my hands and we're ready to begin with our creamy millet and bean cereal. Again, this is on page 4 in your recipe packet. All right, so we're going to get started with our water. We're going to add 1.5 cups of water to our pan. and get it going, started to boil, okay? And while we're doing that, we're going to take our grain. I think you can see this millet, but I will show it to you in the bag. And we're going to add our millet to our blender. You can see many people refer to millet as birdseed, but it has much more benefits than just feeding the birds. We can get great benefit from it as well. And some of those benefits are that it's very high in the minerals potassium, magnesium, calcium. So it helps build good bones. It also has the phosphorus. And also it's good for blood pressure because of its high potassium content. And it's a good detoxifier as well. So in our Start a New You, that's one of our goals. And so we're going to be starting with just grinding it into more of a powder, about the size of what you would have grits as. So we're just going to blend this. Okay, I think you can see it there. We're just going to blend it a little bit more. We still see some whole grains in there. And so we're just going to blend it a little bit more. Perfect. Might be able to see that a little bit better. And this is actually a pseudo grain. It's not the same as like your wheat or your grains that grow on stalks and then we harvest the grain. This is actually more like a seed. And we're going to add this to our boiling water, and we're going to need to whisk it in, because just like if you're familiar with grits, if you pour it all in and you just let it sit, it's just going to clump together and then you're going to have a clumpy cereal. So we want to be sure that we're going to whisk it in. All right. So our water is just beginning to get nice and warm. We're going to need to wait a little bit. You might not have this privilege at your home, but we actually have 2 blenders. So we're going to just put this right on there, and then we'll get started with our bean cream that we're going to be adding to the cereal. Beans in the morning are very important because it gives you a nice fiber jump start, if you will, and make sure everything is nice and cleaned out and ready for the day. So breakfast is one of the most important meals, as we discussed in our class already. You're actually breaking a fast, and that's where it gets its name from. You've been having your digestive system being in rest for several hours while you have slept, and now we're getting it geared up and going again. So having beans for breakfast is actually a good way to get it started and get a jump start on that fiber that you need for the day. So we're going to start by adding 1 cup of beans. You want them cooked, of course, and we're going to add that with the liquid. So we'll add that to the blender. And then we have a nice 1/4 cup, of cashews. And then we have all our seasonings: nutritional yeast, garlic powder, onion powder, salt. And we're going to add that as well, along with just a little bit of lemon juice, 1/2 teaspoon, just to give it a little taste of a little sharper taste. All right, and then we will grind that together. But you want to make sure that it doesn't have any grittiness to it. You want a nice cream like, and there's actually a little bit of grit here, so we'll still need to blend it a little bit more. We're going to add a little water so that it can blend a little bit better. But you can actually drop a spoon, just a drop on your finger, and then rub it in your fingers, and you can feel whether it has grit or not. Now I have some water here so I can rinse my hand. go. And then we're just going to add a little bit of water, maybe 1 or 2 tablespoons at a time until we have the consistency that we want. And our water is boiling, so while we're going to pause, we'll add the salt to the water along with our millet that we have already ground. Remember to get your whisk. We're going to whisk it in. Oops. And some of it might stay in the blender. There we go. We want to make sure we put our lid on, and then we're going to just turn it down to a simmer. We'll give it a stir periodically as we need to. All right, so back to our bean sauce. Let's see if we can get this a little bit more creamy. All right, I think you can see the creaminess of that now. And when we're ready with our millet, we can put that right on in. Give this a nice quick stir. Make sure it's not sticking. All right, just turn that down a little bit more. And we'll get started with our second recipe. Our second recipe, again, is on page 12, and it's the Savory Breakfast Vegetable Delight. Its base ingredient is tofu. Tofu is made from soybeans. It's not a whole food. They've removed the fiber from it, but it is high concentration of protein. So again, it's a good breakfast food. And it can be made very similar to eggs. We're going to make like a vegetable delight with it, with a lot of different vegetables, have a lot of different flavors combined. And the tofu is very beneficial. Soy in general is beneficial for if you are going through menopausal phase of your life. It's helpful to control hot flashes. A serving a day will cut down the hot flashes in about half. And then also it's beneficial in fighting breast cancer, as well as giving a good calcium source and building good bones as well. It actually helps lower cholesterol and helps with heart health as well. So we're going to include this in part of our breakfast, and I'm putting on gloves so that I can crumble it into our skillet. I've allowed it to drain, and when you are purchasing tofu, this is what you're going to be looking for, and it's in the fresh produce section. And you do want to try to make sure that you get the organic tofu. A lot of our soy now is GMO, about 95% of it actually. So you want to be pretty particular about, if you're wanting to avoid GMOs, that you get the organic type of soy. So we're just going to crumble this into our skillet. You want to get it to where it's about the size of what you would have for like scrambled eggs. Okay. Take off the noisy gloves. You can probably think better without them. There we go. Okay, and there you can see the tofu crumbled up. All right. Then we're going to need to grate our potato. So we're going to leave the skin on. Again, it has more fiber and a higher nutrient content if we leave the skin on. And we're trying to just shred about 1/2 cup of potato. And remember that the red potato has a lower glycemic effect. So if you have diabetes, or you have pre-diabetes or metabolic syndrome, then that's going to be important for you, and you want to stick with the red potatoes. Of course, sweet potato has an even lower glycemic effect than a red potato, which seems kind of funny with the name sweet, but that is actually how it goes. All right, so we got about 1/2 cup there. We're just going to add that right here into our skillet. And then we're going to add the remaining ingredients. So we have our onion and our canned tomatoes. We have just added 1/2 can, and that is what this is, along with the juice. The juice is going to help tenderize those potatoes. We have our green chilies that are peeled, very important. And then our seasonings, again, our onion and garlic powders, our nutritional yeast, our parsley, salt, Mrs. Dash, and turmeric. Now, turmeric is a very good grain for us. It is an anti-inflammatory, and if we have diabetes, hypertension, any autoimmune disease, we have inflammation. And so we want to make sure that we are eating foods that are going to help counter that inflammation, and turmeric is one of them. Now, the amount that we're going to be putting in this recipe, of course, is very small. You'd have to take it in a bigger dose than what we're going to be using in our recipe today, but every little bit helps, and you can work toward a lower inflammation diet. And by eating whole foods, that's exactly what you'll be doing. All right, so that was our garlic. Added there as well. We're ready to get it all turned on. Give it a stir. Let all the flavorings combined. The more you cook turmeric, the more yellow it will become. So just a little dab for color is all you need. If you want to take turmeric straight, you can actually get the root yourself and grind it into a powder. And then you can put a tablespoon into a cup of milk. It can be non-dairy milk, and mix it all together, and you'll have what we call golden milk. Now, you don't have to buy the root and grind it yourself. You can buy it in powder form already. And if you want an easier way to take turmeric, then of course you could take the capsules. What is the anti-inflammatory part is actually the curcumin. I'm sure you've been hearing lots about that in the news and magazines and various places. As you go around town, you'll probably see advertisements for curcumin, and it comes from turmeric. All right, we're going to give our millet a stir and see how it's doing. It's doing very well. once you grind it, it only takes about 10 minutes for it to cook. And we put it in there about 9 minutes ago. So we have about another minute. And then we're going to add the bean sauce to the millet. Now with this meal, you could, if you remember our 75-25 plate, you're going to have 75% of your plate from high water, high fiber content foods, which are whole plant-based foods, and then 25% would be like your nuts, something like our savory breakfast delight would be in the 25%. And so we would want to have with this meal our flax seed. That's also going to help fight inflammation. It's going to help clean out any buildup that we have in our blood vessels or even in our digestive system. And it has high omega-3s. So we're actually going to be grinding some flaxseed and adding that to our meal. We're not going to add it into our food, but just to our meal, and I just wanted to show that to you. So here we have the golden flaxseed. The golden flaxseed isn't quite as strong tasting as the brown flaxseed, and you might be able to tolerate this a little bit more. If you have a coffee grinder at your home, then this is what you can grind the flaxseed the easiest. But if you don't, then a blender would work just fine. We do have our coffee grinder right here, and so we're just going to take a little bit and put it in there. You can do a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons at breakfast. And if you wanted to actually measure it, this is about 2 tablespoons, and we'll just do a tablespoon. So that's about half. Put that in there. You can get flaxseed now in most grocery stores. You don't have to go necessarily to a health food store to get it. But if you have a health food store close, like we have here in Eureka Springs, that would be a convenient place to get it as well. Now, because these are getting hot, I'm going to step just over a little bit more. Not a good idea to work over a stove anyway, even though these are the hot plates. So we'll just grind it over here. Little noise. There you go. And you see your ground flaxseed. And then we'll just put that on the side. What I do in the morning is I can mix it with my fruit or even a nut butter. You can mix it with, and it's quite tasty. All right. Let's see how our millet's doing. It should be about done. We can probably turn our burner off. It's looking good. All right, so we'll just get it, combine it with the bean cream now. And give it a stir. So if you're wondering how to get beans in the morning, this is a good way to not even see it, but still get the benefits from it. Now, if you don't mind beans in the morning, most of the world is perfectly fine with eating beans in the morning, but in America, it doesn't fit in the traditional breakfast, of course. So we kind of have to at least start out by camouflaging it. But if you don't need to do that, that's fine. Just have your beans on the side. That'd be great. All right, and we'll just let this sit until we're ready for the tofu to be done. Simmering nicely. Smells good. itself does not have any flavor or any taste except what you add to it. It kind of takes on the flavor of whatever you add. And so it's a very versatile food, from sweet to savory. And you can get various textures as well. You can actually get the boxed Morinu tofu. It's shelf stable. Again, that's Morinu tofu. And I don't have one here to show you today, but it is very good for anything that you wanted to do, like puddings or sauces or smoothies, anything that you're going to put in the blender. It's very beneficial to use the Morinu and not the refrigerated, water-packed tofu that we have used today. Now we're using the extra firm tofu, but you can get soft or you can get firm as well, and then it just depends on what you'd want to be using it for. Like with the extra firm, we want it to stay together, and so that's why we have chosen to use the extra firm today. It is completely covered in water, so it's going to take you a little while to let all that water drain off when you start this recipe. All right, let's give this another little stir. Then I'll show you some other ingredients. See, it's turning a little bit more yellow the longer it cooks. Again, that's from the turmeric. All right, so we're just using the seasoning bottle size of turmeric today, but I just wanted to show you the color, the rich color that it has. Very nice root. And then of course, if you're not familiar with Mrs. Dash, you can buy these at any local grocery store as well. And it's a very nice salt substitute. If you used it at all while we were doing our 10-day Kickstart cleanse, I'm sure you found it very beneficial for making up for the lack of salt in some of the food. So today we're using the Southwest Chipotle flavor, and that's one of my favorites, but you can use any of them, that would be fine. Now, as you know, potatoes stick very easily, so that's why we just continue to stir this and make sure that it's not going to be sticking too much and still be able to get done. Looking good. Our onions are getting nice and clear. Okay. Now I have one other ingredient here to show you, and this is the cheese that we're going to be using. Of course, it's non-dairy cheese, and it's the Adaya cheddar style shreds, and the basic ingredients is from rice in tapioca flour form, and a serving is about a 1/4 cup, and that's what we're adding today, and it has 6 grams of total fat and 250 milligrams of sodium, and it does have carbohydrate as well, as you would expect coming from rice, and that's 7 grams. All right, and very low in protein, only 1 gram compared to what you would get in your cheese, which might be 3 or 4 grams per ounce. Okay, so this is the cheese. It melts slightly, not like regular cheese, of course, but it does melt, and so that's why we've chosen to use that. Now stick with us through Abundant Health Now program, and we'll actually be showing you how to make your own nacho cheese, macaroni and cheese, and things like that. So that will be fun as well. All right, I think we are just about ready. we'll give this one more stir. And indeed we are. It looks good. All right. Yeah, we'll get it all served up and we'll show you the results. Thank you for joining us today. All right, so we have our plate together here, and we have our blackberries. You might be able to see this. Our blackberries, we have an apple, of course our flaxseed, our almonds and walnuts, and now we're just going to add our cereal and vegetable breakfast delight. Now we did add the cheese after we turned off the burner. So it should be somewhat melted. And there you can see that. So remember to add the cheese. Okay, and there we have our nice breakfast with our savory breakfast delight and our creamy millet bean cereal. Hope you enjoy cooking it yourself at home. If you do have any questions, I would be happy to discuss them with you. Until next time, have a great day.